So welcome back. We are still in week 6 of our Parenting Today lecture series, now focusing on that negative spillover from the stress from work to home. So we know that stress in the workplace can result in reduced attention and affection to children. Job stress can lead to conflict between parents, and research tells us that parents who work in non-traditional hours, either daytime hours, typically, deemed that 9 to 5 job, tend to have more emotional distress and less effective parenting skills that can result in greater behavioral problems in children. Poor outcomes arise when parents prioritize work over family, have demanding jobs, and have little parenting support. And conversely, that negative spillover can also occur from home to work. So then that happens when parents find work more stressful than parenting. Parenting feels stress when daughters have no after-school supervision. It's something that the research is indicating strongly. Other sources of stress are dependent on the age of the child. So we do know that having a newborn can be particularly stressful, as can having an adolescent can be more stressful than, let's say, having a school-age child. Again, really all depends on the individual family as well. Individuals that are facing that sandwich generation, so they have stress coming from their children, but then also from their own parents or families of origin, have marked stress. So that's 10 to 13% of families and growing every year. So many people are either finding themselves in as part of this sandwich generation or likely will in the future. So women tend to have more negative as well as positive spillover between work and home. So children's attitudes about working parents, lots of this was derived from Dr. Galinsky, who we reviewed earlier in the semester, again, revisiting as we wrap things up here. Children's attitudes towards mothers are not dependent on the number of hours worked or mother's work status. Children's attitudes toward unemployed fathers tend to be lower than employed fathers, feeling loved or important, or in terms of participating in important events. So parents overall are rated more highly when the family is financially secure. So that's the bottom line, bottom takeaway here. Children felt that mothers and fathers were mostly successful in balancing work and family. Mothers seen as the nursemaid, tutor, comforter. Fathers tend to be rated more highly as women in appreciating children, communicating, and controlling temper in terms of the children studied. Parents rated more highly when they spend more time with children and didn't rush. Really important takeaway from that research as well. There are discrepancies between children and parents. Children are more satisfied with the amount of time spent together than parents. So parents think children want more time with parents, but what children report actually wanting are parents to make more money. So it's possibly so children are wanting their parents to be less stressed. Children are recognizing that finances and money can be a great source of stress. Children want their parents to be less stressed after work, and the children queried want their parents to be less tired. Other discrepancies is 2/3 of children worry about their parents at least sometimes. Parents think they're emotionally available to children, but children tend to disagree when it comes to this. Another thing important of note here, parents are less concerned about their level of anger than their children. So anger tends to be something that children are concerned about. Intentional parenting is defined as the time, energy, and focus that working parents must have in order to meet the child's needs. We know that from this Galinsky study and her subsequent suggestions, the quality time is more important than the quantity or actual amount of hours spent with children. Children want parents to be calm, anger-free, and emotionally available. They want parents to be able to communicate feelings without negativity, and parents should talk about their work, especially the positive aspects. So that teaches children to have a positive attitude about work and also about educational endeavors too. Some suggestions for working parents based on the studies include enlisting family cooperation and completing household chores, which is often a source of criticism and a source of guilt. When we enlist family cooperation, it can help build that spirit of cooperation, build like a team building type of an atmosphere. Also, monitoring children's behavior by phone. It can be effective in reducing bad behavior, especially in boys. Now we're going to move the conversation along talking about daycare. Daycare is defined as non-maternal care. 50% of children in daycare are cared for by relatives. Non-relative family daycare comprises 34% of daycares in a non-relative's home. Non-relative daycare centers comprise 22% of daycare with after-school care. And that's where standards of care and activities may include after-school care again. After school programs, supervised care in elementary school after school hours. A sitter in the home is in 3% of children or families, and self-care by child is something that children can provide as they get older. So definitely something that varies state by state, the age in which children can be left at home. In some states they actually designate a particular age. In some states in the United States it's 10, others it's 12. Other states do not actually designate an age, but rather say that the child has to be mature enough to be left on their own, which is nebulous and sometimes can be figured out in a family court type of a situation if warranted. So I encourage you to become familiar with the rules and regulations, the laws of your state, but most importantly, you really want to take in a child's maturity level, readiness, their safety to be in the house left alone. And ways we can do that is to sort of query this child or about different situations. For example, if there was a fire, if there was an earthquake, if there was a tornado, if a stranger came to the door, and actually set up, different scenarios in a safe setting that you can observe as a parent, to help determine whether or not your child is ready to be left alone. Really important thing. Cost of childcare, something that's really expensive here in the United States. The infant care is more than the cost of food for parents. The cost of childcare for two children is as much or more than the average monthly mortgage payment in the United States. Definitely something that's costly. So we have here a slide that is describing the annual cost of daycare. So an infant in a center-based daycare is $14,000 a year. Again, this is really depending geographically. It can be much more expensive in certain areas, as we in the Mid-Atlantic region, Northeast, and even less expensive in some Western southern states. In terms of a family daycare, the average cost for infants, $9,600. So obviously something that you would want to research before becoming a parent. Different measures in quality in daycare. So there are different structural measures which are determined by state law in most states. Qualifications of providers, educational credentials in terms of hours of experience. What is the turnover for staff? Another really important measure. What is the salary? Also, what is the caregiver to ratio, or child ratio rather? Most states mandates that it's 1 to 3 for infants, for one caregiver caring for up to 6 infants, 1 to 4 for toddlers, up to 8, and then 1 to 7 for preschoolers, up to 14. So there's different process measures measuring the caregiver's sensitivity and responsiveness, appropriate stimulation level. Sensitivity and responsiveness is really the best indicator in terms of quality of care, and it's something that can be hard to measure as a parent or as an investigator, because it's not something that you can really sort of check off in a box. It's more of one of those less tangible kinds of qualities that we really have to be closely monitoring, sometimes by unannounced type of visits, coming to check on your child. Nanny cams and things like that can help provide a window, but aren't always, available or ethical to use in circumstances. Salaries is the best measure of caregiver stability statistically. We do know that the less money that we're paying caregivers, the higher the rate of turnover. We do know that it's important for attachment and also important for the youngest children to get the best quality of care, knowing that brain development is something that really explodes during the first 30 months of life, 3 years of life. Other measures in terms of quality at daycare. Daycare centers, 14% are listed as high quality, really promote positive development. 74% rated as providing mediocre quality. 12% rated as low quality. 40% of daycare for infants and toddlers has been rated low quality. In terms of family daycare, 9% rated as high quality, 56% rated mediocre, 35% low quality. So this right here is showing cumulative inequality in terms of daycare as compared to lifelong outcomes. So poor quality daycare can translate into reduced language comprehension and cognition. Multiple care settings can also result in reduced language comprehension as well. So is daycare stressful for children? So we know that cortisol is a hormone that is released in the bloodstream during times of stress. And infants and toddlers in daycare have elevated cortisol levels throughout the day. Toddlers who play with other children tend to have less elevation. We do know that cortisol levels decrease when children are at home with one or more parents. Cortisol levels tend to decrease when mothers stay at home with children or stay with children at daycare until they get used to the setting. So that's something that we know that can help mitigate those cortisol levels. So is daycare bad for children? Attachment between mother and child is not reduced by daycare. Research finds that the parenting relationship is more important than daycare in childhood adjustment. So again, really pointing to those relationship protective factors. In terms of daycare for older children and looking at school-age children, it's good after-school care is related to better functioning in school. It's really reminiscent of that Freud's latent stage, reflecting in school-age children. In terms of adolescence, self-care and lack of monitoring can be due to can result in increased smoking and substance abuse. So it's really important for those that are parenting adolescents. We actually have looked at research and that we can actually nail down teens becoming pregnant to a specific time of the day between the hours of like 3:30 to about 5:30 in the afternoon. So that correlates with many times the adolescents or even tweens are being left at home unsupervised. So we know that that lack of monitoring and that self-care can result in some negative outcomes. So now shifting focus, talking about divorce and the impact on children. Up to a third of marriages in the United States end within 10 years, which is a high likelihood that young children will experiencing the divorce of their parents. It really depends on quality of relationship between parents, and it decreases generational closeness, divorce does. Remarriage of parents dilutes generational closeness even more, and divorce and remarriage tends to weaken ties with grandparents, especially on the father's side. So we're going to end this part in the lecture series, and I look forward to seeing you at the next part.